very shortly. Looks like both players are happy with their 7 cards. And it'll be interesting to see, how do you think this matchup usually plays out?
So I suspect the matchup's going to slightly favor Sneak and Show. I mean, typically the combo decks are the most difficult matchup for Esper-style decks. And here we can see Brian does not have main deck Force of Wills. Those are in his sideboard. So he really is going to be relying on his 5 main deck discard spells. He has 3 Thoughtseize, his 2 Inquisitions, as well as his kind of 1 counterspell to provide enough disruption to buy him time. But he's not that efficient at racing, right?
Yeah.
Typically, again, these Esper decks, their most efficient racing card is a Batter Skull coming out on turn 3. That's not that fast of a clock.
Yeah, and usually from a lot of the Esper decks we've been seeing this weekend, a lot of them play at least 3 Force of Wills in the main to sort of hedge against the combo decks that they generally have somewhat of a weak matchup against.
And we see, Sneak and Show is one of the more resilient of the combo decks because it has so much protection. It has these misdirections, these Force of Wills, and these Spell Pierces. It can build up a hand where it can go off with multiple counterspells up, and Brian's not going to really be able to force through that.
Yeah, and the thing about Phillip's deck is, again, as long as he's able to make his land drops, eventually he's going to be able to force his combo through. Brian just doesn't have enough permission to stop it. And generally the way the deck can beat Sneak Attack is by getting enough pressure in play and enough disruption to slow him down. But like you said, the Esper deck just can't put nearly enough pressure on their opponent for that to be a real factor in this matchup.
I don't want you presenting your standard deck. That will be quite unfortunate.
So we're having some final announcements here before we get the round going.
55 minutes for the rounds today.
And it looks like, and Brian's had a lot of success in the Open Series. He's a Star City Games writer, obviously. So I think a lot of people not too surprised with his performance this weekend at 8-0. And it looks like Brian's on the play, which is, again, something he probably needs to be against this deck.
Absolutely. He needs to in order to have a chance. At Phillip's hand, I see 2 copies of Emrakul, an Intuition, a Ponder, some lands, and it looks like a Lotus Petal. So not the fastest or the most resilient hand. Does not have a lot of interactive synergy. There's no interaction whatsoever. So he's going to need to find, probably a Spell Pierce or a Forcible to...
On the plus side, though, at least he has, with the intuition to be able to search for the show and tell, he effectively does have his combo, so to speak. So he will be able to actually cast it. But like you said, he doesn't have any permission or a lot of action right now.
Yep. Looking at Brian's hand, similarly we see a Stoneforge Mystic. We also saw a Brainstorm and a Umazawa Jitte hiding there. Jitte not very powerful in this matchup. One of the cards we're going to be looking for to board out. Just doesn't really do enough. Here we see Phillip just casting a turn 1 Ponder, doing a little deck manipulation.
And yeah, the pressure's really on Brian here. He really needs the disruption. It looks like he has at least 1 Thoughtseize.
Right,
so
that's take that intuition, and that'll put Phillip on the back foot here, needing to find a natural show and tell or Sneak Attack to get going.
Hopefully he gets a little help here with the Ponder, but again, Brian's going to be able to cast a Thoughtseize and a Stoneforge Mystic on turn 2, so he's going to be able to disrupt Phillip a little bit and continue to add stuff to the board.
We're going to see a shuffle here. 3 lands for Phillip, not what he's looking for off that Ponder.
Yeah, and not exactly what you want to have happen, especially when you're searching for at least a Force of Will or another combo piece, but if he's able to draw a Show and Tell, or even a Brainstorm would be reasonable.
He has 2 in his hand, so there's a Force of Will.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's only blue card is the Intuition that he wants to cast, so not so helpful yet.
I'd imagine Brian probably takes the Intuition here just to stop Phillip from getting the combo.
Yep.
So here we see the Intuition. Phillip looks like he might be considering Forcible. I don't think you probably can't Forcible here.
I don't like Forcible in that.
So again, still not the worst position for Phillip. He probably loses Intuition here, but he still has plenty of outs. He has Sneak Attack, he has Show and Tell. Even a Brainstorm's pretty reasonable here.
Yep.
He at least has a Forcible now, so if he needs to try to force through his combo later on, he will. And again, Brian's deck isn't able to put enough pressure on Phillip, so and Phillip has plenty of mana with 2 Lotus Petals.
Absolutely. So I mean, we're in a spot here where two Lotus Petals and an Ancient Doom, he can actually play and activate Sneak Attack next turn.
Yeah.
If he draws it naturally here, and end the game with that Emrakul. So he's 1 top deck away from just emerging victorious.
And that's the thing about the Sneak and Show deck is that it's just so robust because it's basically just a 2-card combo.
Yep.
You're not trying that hard to assemble. It's something like like even a Storm deck. Storm is very powerful, but you still need a lot of ritual effects. You need a lot of cantrips in order to actually go off. Whereas Sneak and Show, 2 cards, that's it.
And there's 8 copies of each functionally, so it's very redundant.
And you have plenty of search, and you even which allows you to play more permission than a typical combo deck.
I mean, I think Sneak and Show is probably my favorite of the combo decks in the format. I think it doesn't have maybe the raw explosiveness of a Teps, but it's also a little more forgiving to play, to kind of play lines, and also and just more redundant.
Yeah.
With all the different interaction and repetitive elements.
Yeah, you can't go off on turn 1 or turn 2 as consistently as some of the other combo decks, but you give some of that up for a little more control elements, as well as a little more consistency in terms of not being able to get hated out as easily.
So here we see Phillip playing the Ancient Tomb instead of the fetch land he just drew, so that Brian has to respect that Force of Will, which is a play that I like.
Yeah, he's not giving up any more information.
Yep. Yeah, I expect to see Brian actually just brainstorm here with that fetch land in his hand, digging for more hand disruption.
Yeah, Brian's in a good spot right here because he can get the Batterskull into play. It's pretty much the ideal start for Brian. He got a Death Rush Shaman into play along with the Stoneforge Mystic, and he has Brainstorm to help dig for a little more answers, and even had a Thoughtseize.
So the Inquisition will probably is only going to take a Lotus Petal, which we know, which is not going to actually do anything. So he might, but I think he probably still will pull the trigger on it. I expect him to just play that Inquisition and then leave up 2 mana so he can fetch and then activate the Stoneforge Mystic to put the Batterskull to play.
Would you cast Intuition now, or would you Inquisition now, or would you wait maybe a turn?
So you have to think about what are you getting. So it's possible you certainly can wait 1 turn. I don't dislike that. Having just seen his hand, you're never going to get Show and Tell, right? Because it's just going to always get played right away. So you're really only looking to get things like Spell Pierce at this point.
Yeah.
His only live card he has. Here, Brian choosing to play it right away.
Gets a little more information too, so he gets a Lotus Petal, and now he knows that Phillip just drew a land for the turn. So, and again, it's not like he was using his mana for anything else, so pretty reasonable play there.
You have that free activation. I can't see. Does Brian have another land in his hand? I don't believe he does. So Brian probably wants to have his format next to him so that he can play a Jace.
Yeah.
If he draws one.
You consider maybe just activating Death Ray Shaman if you had the mana available, but you really don't because you need to use it for the Stoneforge Mystic activation. So Brian doing a good job of using all his mana every turn and being very efficient that way. Phillip draws a Grizzlebrand, which
not what he wants.
Not exactly what he wants. I think he really needs a Brainstorm right here. Or again, Sneak Attack would be great. Any of his combo pieces would be fine, but at least Brainstorm would give him another reasonable draw step.
I mean, he has like 15 draws he really wants, right? He has the 4 Brainstorms, the 3 Ponders that are left, and then 4 of each of the combo pieces.
Yeah.
So that's a large number of very live draws.
Yeah, 15 good draws here. But Brian is going to be pressuring with the Batterskull. I believe he also has a Jeté, or he might have shuffled the Jeté.
He pre-shuffled that in, I believe.
So between the Batterskull and the Deathrite Shaman, he's got a reasonable clock on board right now.
Excuse me there, guys. My allergies have kicked in this morning, so bear with me on that one.
So he can attack with the Batterskull and the Stoneforge Mystic, and it looks like Brian drew another Thoughtseize, which isn't going to be that great. It's, he'll be able to take a Force of Will or a Grizzlebrand, but again, it's not going to stop Phillip.
At this point, Phillip's playing off the top of his deck, so Brian really would prefer to have a counterspell.
Yeah.
Something that's going to be reactive in this particular spot than proactive, because he has picked apart his hand so efficiently already.
Yeah, and at this point, all the Thoughtseizes are basically like. I think you still Thoughtseize here and probably just take the Grizzlebrand, because if you do draw another Thoughtseize and Phillip blanks again, you could still just take the Emrakul and he would have.
Well, he has 2 Emrakuls in his hand.
Oh, that's right.
So he has a lot of redundancy on his terms of his threats. Yeah, here Brian looking to get the max amount of damage on the board. He's going to probably activate the Deathrite Shaman to deal 2 at the end of the turn, putting him to 12, and the next turn be able to put him to 10, 6, 4.
Yeah, and we're getting to the point here where Phillip isn't really going to be able to survive, I think, another 2 turns. I think he basically has this turn and maybe 1 more, but
yep.
He's going to have to
if he has to tap that Ancient Tomb.
Yeah.
Now Thoughtseize the Grizzlebrand is relevant, because Grizzlebrand's one, although Brian also may have Swords of Flashers, he did at one point, may have shuffled it away, but I don't think he probably did.
Yeah.
So Grizzlebrand won't do anything. Playing Emrakul and then just dying to the other 2 attackers is the most likely. And then we see the swords drawn. So Phillip, and even if he draws, let's say, a sneak attack, Brian now has enough permanence to sack to keep his Batterskull in play with the Germ token attached, which is then still going to be lethal. So I think at this point, Phillip might just be drawing dead. He just took him too long to get going.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I think if he draws sneak attack, he might be still okay.
So he draws sneak attack. He's going to have to pay life, or take damage to cast it, right?
So he would drop down to 4, and then Batterskull's the only permanent left. Yep.
Pretty sure he is unfortunate for him just drawing dead.
So yeah, it doesn't look like Phillip has too many live draws right here.
And we saw, I mean, we did see Brian kind of had the optimal draw for his deck, which is 1 disruption spell, and then just get the Batterskull in play and hope that your opponent just draws poorly.
Yeah, I mean, again, Brian doesn't have, a very aggressive creature base, but he got what he needed to get into play on turns 1 and 2, and then he followed that up with the disruption spell, which is the ideal draw that Brian needs in game 1 in order to win. And again, Phillip had plenty of outs, just, sometimes you don't draw them.
Yep. The top of his deck was not very forgiving this game.
So, yeah, so Brian can activate the Deathrite Shaman even if he drew a show and tell, but it looks like they'll just brick there anyway. So, and there's a concession. Brian Brown wins the first game.
That's a big win for him because, I mean, this matchup, since he certainly is an underdog, big underdog, I think, in game 1, and it gets better after board. Having that first game in the bag, it puts him in a great spot to win this match. Looking at kind of his sideboard options now, it's going to get a lot better for Brian. We're going to have his sideboard is a Thoughtseize, 2 Vendilion Clicks, a Snapcaster Mage, 2 Surgical Extractions, a Counterspell, 2 Supreme Verdicts, 3 Force of Wills, a Vindicate, a Path to Exile, and a Disenchant. So here we're going to see him bringing in another Disruption Spell in that Thoughtseize and those 2 Vendilion Clicks, upping his way to interact with Phillip's hand. And those clicks are nice too because you can do it in the draw step. So like this game here, he's very subject to if Phillip rips a sneak attack and just kill him, Vendilion Click gives you an answer to that.
Yeah, I really like the combination of hand disruption and permission that's coming in. So that's the exact way you want to attack this game.
Right. He'll bring in those 3. He'll probably bring in the 2 Surgical Extractions. I like those here because Phillip does only have 8 cards that matter. Right. Those 4 show and tells, those 4 sneak attacks. You have enough with your 4 Thoughtseize or 2 Inquisitions. You have enough ways to get those out of his hand proactively. You can now get them all out of his deck, really limiting his ways to win. So I actually would be bringing in the Thoughtseize, the 2 clicks, the 2 extractions, the 3 Force of Wills for sure, possibly even the Counterspell, and then maybe that 4 Snapcaster Mage as well. I don't think you want something like Disenchant. It does kill Sneak Attack, but Sneak Attack oftentimes has already done its damage on that first turn. So I think as far as something you stay away from, you probably want to board out your Swords to Plowshares. Maybe leave 1 or 2 in just to keep him honest on a show and tell Grizzlebrand. Give you an answer there. You probably can cut the Ubizawa Jitte for sure. Potentially even can cut some Liliana's maybe. Probably a little bit slow. Although the Edict ability on show and tell and Emrakul is pretty nice.
Yeah, I think having a follow-up play to a show and tell Emrakul is probably a reasonable idea. So I think Liliana probably wants to stay in. I don't know if you need the Jace probably.
It's a little slow. You can totally cut 1. Among the creatures, I mean, Dark Confidant almost certainly staying in, trying to draw you more disruption. Stoneforge Mystic, you can shave the number of those. The one concern here is you want to make sure you still can have an efficient clock. Like we saw this game, it's very valuable to have a threat here on turn 2. But Stoneforge Mystic, having 4 Stoneforge Mystics with only 1 Batterskull in the deck, and having it not be that great, I have no problem cutting a Mystic or 2 as well. It's something that I typically do in these kind of matchups.
Out of Phillip's deck, he has 4 Leyline of Sanctity, 3 Grafdigger's Cage, 3 Through the Breach, 3 Pyroblast, 1 Echoing Truth, and 1 Wipe Away. Now, would you think Phillip might consider bringing in the Leyline of Sanctity, sort of blank all the hand disruption?
If he knows how much that Brian has, I think he certainly would bring those in. I mean, with 6 targeted discard spells plus those 2 clicks, that's a lot of cards you could shut down.
Yeah, a card like Misdirection doesn't seem that great in this matchup because of the amount of cheap hand disruption that Brian does have. And cards like Vendilion Click, I think a card like Leyline of Sanctity, if Phillip is aware of the kind of disruption Brian's bringing in, I think he would definitely bring in the Leyline Sanctity for at least the Misdirections, and then maybe bringing in the Pyroblast as well.
Yeah, I think the Pyroblast are certainly something that you kind of automatically bring in, but I think it's actually that good. Brian really has 4 or 5 blue cards that are going to be that relevant.
Yeah, I wouldn't bring in all Pyroblast, but I think having maybe 1 or 2 is better than the Spell Pierces, perhaps. So he has 3 Misdirection, 3 Spell Pierce main deck. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw 4 Leyline and 2 Power Blast come in for those 6.
Sure.
Because the Spell Pierce isn't that great in this matchup.
I think if you're bringing in ley lines, you can certainly take out Spell Pierces, because one of the primary purposes of Pierce is to stop a turn 1 Thoughtseize. So since he's on the play, but now if he has those ley lines protecting him, there's not that much for the Spell Pierce to interact with.
Yeah. You have a card like Through the Breach, which generally comes in against decks where you can't afford to cast Show and Tell because they're going to bring in they're going to put something into play that's just as devastating. So that probably is not coming in. Don't think he needs the Echoing Truth or the Wipe Away. Those are usually just catch-alls, and I don't think he probably doesn't need that in this matchup. Again, it could be a guessing game because he doesn't know exactly what's Brian bringing in. But I think the safe bet is Leyline and Power Blast are probably coming in.
Here we see opening hand, so Phillip with the sneak attack and an Emrakul in his opening hand. Looks like a Ponder and a Spell Pierce as well, with 3 lands to go with it. Great opening hand for him.
Yeah, so he has the way to stop the turn 1 Thoughtseize or Inquisition.
Yep. And having that Pearson makes me wonder, maybe he brought in a couple of lines, maybe he didn't bring in any, maybe he didn't think that it was worth it here.
Didn't bother.
He doesn't have the kind of information that we do, where we know that that those ley lines shut down 8 cards in Brian's deck. He might, typically maybe it's only 4 to 6.
Yeah, and again, Leyline's more of a card that he probably has in his sideboard against combo decks like Ant or something like that. So not something you would typically consider maybe for this matchup.
Absolutely. Here we're going to see probably at turn 1. I didn't actually see Brian's hand, but probably turn 1 Thoughtseize Requisition is going to get Spell Piercer, is my guess.
Yeah, I believe he has an Inquisition, so I think we could be seeing a turn 1 Inquisition. And, that's, again, pretty reasonable start. It looks like he has a Dark Confidant and double Force of Will, so... Oh, it looks like he has a turn 1 Ponder, actually.
So this interesting card that, Phil probably considered piercing here. Oftentimes, decks have to keep mana light hands where they're pondering to dig for their second land.
Yeah.
And a Spell Piercer can be very effective.
And it looks like that's exactly what Brian was doing, but thankfully for Phillip, he had to shuffle his... Brian had to take the shuffle effect, which is a pretty good position to be in because obviously he didn't find what he was looking for, so... getting the advantage of Brian's top of the deck here. So Brian draws, it doesn't look to be a land, but it does appear to be another disruption spell. So Phillip draws another land for the turn, and now it looks like he's going to go for the turn 2 Ponder. Again, he has his combo, he has the Emrakul, and he has their sneak attack. And it looks like there's a pretty good top 3 cards, an Ancient Tomb, Show and Tell, and a Brainstorm. Pretty reasonable to want to keep those 3 just in case Brian does resolve. If Brian goes turn 2 Thoughtseize and Inquisition in order to force, even though Phillip has 1 Spell Pierce to counter one of them, one of the discard spells might resolve, so Phillip might want to just keep those 3 on top of his deck so he has the Show and Tell.
It's an interesting order he's putting them back in there. It looks like he's considering putting the Brainstorm on the bottom, the Ancient Tomb on top, drawing that Ancient Tomb.
And I kind of like this because he draws the Ancient Tomb. If Brian does cast Inquisition, for instance, he might consider just letting that resolve.
Sure. And
then next turn he can just cast...
well, it looks like the line he's setting up here, just given the one downside here is he has to shuffle for that Spell Pierce mana, and he loses now the Show and Tell.
Well, I think he's going to let this resolve and just take the Spell Pierce. Why not? Because it's the same effect. All you're losing is a Spell Pierce.
And I think what he's setting up here is next turn Show and Tell into Sneak Attack, into activating and putting Emrakul into play.
Yeah.
Awkwardly here, though, I mean, it doesn't actually kill Brian. We don't have a follow-up threat or any follow-up disruption. We might have the same situation last game where it's like, okay, I'm on 7 outs to kill you. And
yeah, but then again, the only difference is he was able to do 15 damage, he kills his land, and he has still sneak attack in place.
Sure,
so it's
it is a little better.
And I'm not sure if Brian actually drew a land for the turn. I think he might have had only 1 land to start with, which is why the Ponder was so important for him, and he whiffed on turn 1. So, yeah, sneak attack.
Oh, you're right. He has 2 Force of Wills.
He does have 2 Force of Wills, though. But again, not that bad of a situation for Phillip because we know he has the Show and Tell on top of his deck, so tries to cast the Show and Tell. Brian obviously tries to Force of Wills that, and the next turn he can still go for the sneak attack.
Yep.
And looks like, Brian doesn't have a second land. Phillip draws the Show and Tell for the turn. Still has that Brainstorm at the bottom of the library. And this is actually pretty good for Phillip right here because he can cast a Show and Tell without sacking the fetch land, so he can still draw that Brainstorm next turn if he wants to.
This will certainly get Force of Will.
Yeah, Brian doesn't even have anything that he can put. He has a Dark Confidant that he can put in play. But.
Oh, he's already pitched the Jace here, keeping the second Force in his hands, but without a second blue card, it looks like.
It looks like he has... Okay, so Jace of the Mind Sculptor gets pitched to Force of Will, and Show and Tell gets countered. And I believe Brian has 2 Dark Confidants, a Force of Will, and then another card in his hand that we can't make out.
So it's awkward here. He really wants to draw a land, but he really wants to draw a blue card as well.
Yeah, okay, so he has an Inquisition. Oh,
Inquisition.
he has a Surgical Extraction as well.
What does he?
Yeah, Surgical Extraction, double Dark Confidant, Inquisition of Kozilek, Disenchant. Interesting.
So he did bring in Disenchant to try to deal with the Resolve Sneak Attack, which actually could become relevant here, potentially.
Yeah, so it looks like Sneak Attack's going to be able to resolve here. He chose not to cast Inquisition because he knows what's in his hand. He knew Phillip just top deck a Show and Tell, so he knows exactly what's in the hand now. So it looks like Phillip's going to try to dig for a little more permission, maybe a Spell Pierce or a Force of Will, so he can try to...
I like surgically these Show and Tells right here, I think.
Well, the thing is that Brian knows what's in Phillip's hand. He knows he has a Sneak Attack. Sure. He knows he has an...
Oh, he knows... That's right.
Because he Inquisitioned the
I
last
forgot he
turn,
knew about the Sneak Attack.
which is why he didn't Inquisition this turn.
Right, I forgot about that. He knew that the Sneak Attack was there.
Yeah.
If you don't know the Sneak Attack, you want to take the Show and Tells out of the live draws off this Brainstorm, because you'll be able to cast them right away without passing priority. But I agree, if you already know about the Sneak Attack, that makes complete sense.
So it'd be really interesting if Phillip just tries to jam a Sneak Attack right here, because Brian does have the Disenchant. So, okay, Brian smartly chooses not to play the Sneak Attack, and which is, you know, still a good position for him because he has the Brainstorm. So if Brian does draw a Thoughtseize as opposed to another land, he can still use Brainstorm to hide it. Yeah, so Brian doesn't have a second land here, and not much he can do. He doesn't have another blue spell that he can pitch to the Force of Will. So it looks like Phillip's going to be able to get a Sneak Attack to resolve next turn. Chooses to draws a Volcanic Island for the turn. Let's see, is he still afraid of Force of Will? Or will he go for it? Yep, looks like he's going to go for a Sneak Attack here.
Which makes sense with the Brainstorm still in his hand. These 2 fetch lands, he's enough.
He can play around. He can play around Spell Pierce. And it does appear like Brian will have to let that resolve.
One thing I think I would have done is I would have fetched first.
Yeah, you don't want to. Well, with 2 fetch lands, he could probably respond to any.
With the second fetch activation, that's fair.
And
I guess it's just 1 blue-black mana. You're not really that concerned.
And I believe Phillip does have another. I believe he has Emrakul and Grizzlebrand in hand.
He does.
So he should be able to lock up the game this turn.
Lethal coming across right now.
Gets a mountain and a Volcanic Island, and 2 activations. Yep, Emrakul and Grizzlebrand. Super Twins are coming into play to finish this game up, and there we go.
All right, off to game 3. Here we saw Brian, just being stuck on 1 land, not a lot you can do in that spot.
Yeah, and it
tried to fight back.
Looked like Phillip didn't board in the ley lines. It looked like he kept in the Spell Pierces. Probably just boarded in Pyroblast or maybe some copies of the Spell Pierce. Maybe trimmed some of the numbers. But it did look like Brian brought in the Disenchant. So, do you think maybe? What do you think he's thinking of? Maybe he's afraid of. Do you think he thought Leyline that he might be coming in, or he just wanted to deal with the Sneak Attack?
Having a way to deal with the Sneak Attack once it's resolved isn't unreasonable, because there are a lot of times where Phillip will just jam it onto the board, and then having it out to draw is nice.
Well, the interesting thing is sometimes they'll like only have enough mana for 1 or 2 activations of a Sneak Attack.
Yep.
So if the card they sneak into play is a Grizzlebrand, so usually they'll activate the Grizzlebrand to draw 7 cards. In response, if you're able to disenchant it, they might not have enough life to activate again to try to draw that second threat to bring into play. So disenchant's not not a terrible option here, even though obviously once the Sneak Attack into play, it's going to do some work.
Yep.
But still, Brian could actually get some value out of his disenchants.
I would still just rather be building my game plan around I don't think you want to build a plan around the worst case scenarios like that. I would really want to configure my entire 60 card deck to keeping that Sneak Attack out of play.
Yeah, but this might be a situation where Brian just thinks he has too many cards in his main deck that just aren't effective in this matchup.
I can't imagine that though. He has so many cards he wants to board in. Thoughtseize, 2 clicks, 2 Surgicals, 3 Force of Will. That's a lot of cards he's bringing in here already. That's 8 cards. He has a Snapcaster and a Counterspell, which both are certainly reasonable. That gives us the 10 cards he wants to bring in. He does not have 10 dead cards in his main deck.
I could see Jace's, 3 Jace, 4 Brainstorm. I could see those coming out. I could see one of the The Jitte's coming out
We saw
possibly.
the Jit definitely comes out.
Yeah.
We saw actually.
We did see a Jason in his hand,
hand.
so yeah.
It's possible he takes out all the Stoneforge mystics and both the equipments. That's one
Interesting.
reasonable option. It tries to become a pure control deck.
And again, Stoneforge is not a huge threat, and if you're bringing in Vendilion clicks, you do have a way to attack, you know? He has 3 Snapcaster Mage, he'll go up to 4 after board, so 4 Snapcaster Mage, Vendilion click, and just a bunch of disruption might be enough. You don't need to go turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic searching for a Batter Skull.
Well, I absolutely agree with you there. And I think this is a spot where those might be the cards that are coming out.
And especially on the draw, I don't even think you can afford to go turn 2 Stoneforge sometimes, just because of how quickly Phillip's deck can go off. So yeah, I wouldn't be. It's probably Stoneforge could be. The Stoneforge package could just be coming out of the sideboard.
That is one of the main reasons why I shied away from playing a Stoneforge deck in Denver, is I thought Stoneforge, that card itself, is just not very good against unfair decks. It's just too slow.
Yeah.
Just
Obviously,
getting a
a
Batter
card
Skull.
great against fair decks, not very good against control deck or combo decks, just because it's a little too slow. And both players still shuffling here, and you know, again, Brian's able to be on the play this turn. He's not going to be able. Spell Pierce won't be able to stop an Inquisitioner or a turn 1 Inquisitioner or Thoughtseize, so Brian's still in pretty good shape. I think his sideboard plan after board, as long as he draws lands, I think is still pretty solid in this matchup.
And here we see 2 Force of Wills, a Pyroblast, and a Show and Tell with 3 lands. Looks like that card might be a Grizzlebrand for Phillip. A Disrupt, yeah, I think actually it's a Grizzlebrand in the back. So, and it looks like it's an Ancient Tomb and a Fetch land potentially. So Phillip might just have a turn 2 Grizzlebrand in his hand.
Yeah, and Brian has a really good start. He has a turn 1 Deathrite Shaman. He also has a Dark Confidant to follow it up with, but he also has Vendilion Click. So
that might just be too slow here, though. I think we're gonna see a turn 2, turn 2 Show and Tell with Forcible backup, dropping Grizzlebrand into play.
Well,
and having Pyroblast to protect us.
That's a pretty fast start, yes. But so. Oh, wow.
Inquisition drawn. Okay, so that's
Inquisition. So yeah, it depends on what the line here is. Do you think Phillip just? Do you think Brian just plays the land and he tries to sort of Vendilion Click on the upkeep?
Or so he's going to be.
So it looks like he's going to go. Okay, so Inquisition
so
here.
Forcible, I suspect. It has to. I think you use Forcible and you go for it here. But it depends on how much respect he gives.
Yeah, but it looks like
Brian's
that's
interacting. His hand can't really take another line because he doesn't have any kind of deck manipulation.
Yeah.
He can't afford to try to just say, okay, I'll let this resolve, take my Show and Tell, I'll just draw another one eventually.
Yeah.
And he still has
a Pyroblast too. The only concern is here, if he only has a Grizzlebrand to come into play, Plowshares will stop that, but again, at least he's going to be able to draw some cards off that.
And you have to figure Brian can't possibly still have 4 copies in, maybe he has 2.
Yeah.
And yeah, he'll get at least 1 or 2 activations out of it. So I think it's a spot where, and seeing him get a Tundra now, so okay, he's probably not Thoughtseizing me again, unless he's going to, activate the Deathrite Shaman for black, which we know he's not. He's playing a Bob.
So, assuming we get a Show and Tell next turn, we're probably going to see a click come into play for Brian. Probably clicks himself at this point to try to draw either a Jace the Mind Sculptor or some way to deal with the Grizzlebrand.
And having drawn that sneak attack now, I think he's definitely going to go for it. He now has a backup plan. He has some redundancy here. Go ahead, just fetch up an island, and let's we're off to the races.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable plan here. You just want to cast Show and Tell, get a Grizzlebrand into play. Again, Brian still has outs to it. He's plenty of cards that can deal with the Grizzlebrand, but Phillip's still going to be able to draw a bunch of cards off the Grizzlebrand, and he has the sneak attack as redundancy next turn.
Yep.
And with the Ancient Tomb too, if he draws a Lotus Petal, he'll not be able to he'll be able to cast a sneak attack next turn and activate it. Yeah, and Phillip's dropping to 16 now, I believe, so still in a pretty good shape life-wise, and Brian's really not threatening that much. So yeah, click comes into play.
Not a Caracas. What's Brian's last card?
Looks like it's a Brainstorm.
It's a Brainstorm and something. What's the other one?
Can't tell.
Okay, so you decided to click Phillip.
Okay, so taking a sneak attack likely.
I would assume so.
And what do you do?
Make there's a do a little more work. And the fact that I think his other card was it Counterspell actually. It may have been. It was Brainstorm and another blue card.
So it looks like Brian's thinking about what to take here. You'd imagine he'd probably take the sneak attack, but again, with Phillip being able to draw 7 cards, maybe.
You don't want to leave him though with one of his pieces in his hand.
Yeah,
I think
you want to make him
there.
work for it. He already used 1 show and tell. Only has 6 copies left of either a sneak attack or a show and tell. So probably just take the sneak attack here. Yeah, it looks like Brian has 2 copies of Brainstorm in his hand. Brian allows him to keep both cards, reveals a Flooded Strand with the Dark Confidant, and draws another land for the turn on Tropical Island. So those Brainstorms are going to have to get a little lucky here. Thankfully, he did draw sack land, so he'll be able to shuffle away some of the cards he doesn't need, like a Tropical Island.
He's tapping his white man again, suggesting maybe there isn't a swords in his future.
Drew a Thoughtseize and a counterspell, but nothing to deal with the Grizzlebrand as of yet. So Tropical Island and another land might go on top of his library, and then the fetch land might give him another crack at searching for an answer. So it looks like Tropical Island and another land are going on top of the deck. Flooded Strand likely to come down and immediately get sacked to try to find an answer.
Yep.
And again, with the Deathrite Shaman and the Flooded Strand, he has still access to white mana, so Plowshares is still an out if he still has it in his deck, though.
Yep. Could maybe even have brought in the Vindicate. This is a more versatile answer.
Okay, so it looks like he's going to
surprises me. I think you want to try to find a swords first, because you can swords the Grizzlebrand and make him draw a 7 and then Thoughtseize.
He might just not have it in his deck. You know, he might not have. He might have taken out all the removal.
If that's the case, I'm not sure what our plan is here against this Grizzlebrand.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe he was. I was assuming like he was digging for like a Liliana, at least. But
the Grizzlebrand being activated end of turn.
Interesting.
Don't actually need to do it. The guy can just activate it main phase, but it's all right.
Yeah. So decided to activate it main.
Did not find much.
Yeah.
A lot of land and a couple ponders.
But you don't need that much with the Grizzlebrand.
True.
So he still has that Pyroblast in order to stop, possibly a Jace.
Probably just gonna Pyroblast that click out of the way, even maybe.
Yeah, we're probably gonna see a Ponder first, try to dig for something else.
And some more.
Nothing good. That's getting shuffled away for sure. Yeah, I don't think he needs to. I don't think he needs to Pyroblast to click. I think he's fine with just winning with the Grizzlebrand. Brian doesn't have that many answers. He really doesn't want to lose to a card like Jace the Mind Sculptor if he doesn't have to. Again, he's going to be able to gain 7 life off of the lifelink ability of Grizzlebrand, so he'll get another crack at drawing 7.
Not even finding a Lotus Petal is unfortunate.
Yeah. So Phillip gains 7 life.
Does he draw another 7? That's the real question here.
Well, with Brian has 5 points of power worth of attack, and he also has a Deathrite Shaman which he can activate at the end of Phillip's turn. So dropping him to 14, and then the 5 will drop him down to 9. So yeah, it's drawing 7. You can't really do that right here. So again, it's not going to matter if he doesn't have an answer to Grizzlebrand. Grizzlebrand's going to attack for the win. And Brian's hand, he has a counter spell, but no answer to a 7/7 flying lifelinker. So let's see if Brian's able to get there. At the very least, he has enough attackers to kind of mitigate some. Oh, so there's the. Oh wow! But he has to take 4 from it. So.
And we know there's a
really needs a force of will.
For that
yeah,
guy.
Really needs a force of will. Otherwise, he's likely dead next turn. Oh, there's the force of will. So he's going to be able to force through this Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Well,
the only thing is,
draw 7 and was certainly a response, right?
Well, the problem with that is though, okay. So thankfully, Brian doesn't have another land in his hand, so he's going to have to activate the Deathrite Shaman in order to cast the Jace the Mind Sculptor, which means that Phillip knows he can activate the Grizzlebrand safely.
Yep.
So yeah, if he did have another land, then he would have had to drawn. He couldn't have drawn 7 because Brian would have been able to just.
If he bricks these 7 though, Brian is going to win this game.
Yeah, he still needs to draw something.
Yeah, there's a lot of things he can, even just a sneak attack for like a redraw.
Oh yeah, the thing is he's drawing 7, so even if he blanks, all that happens is Grizzlebrand just gets bounced. Yeah,
it gets bounced and then he takes 5. Right?
Yeah, but
going to 2.
And oh wow,
there's a lot of through the breaches and
wow.
a wipe away. So he did not draw a pitch. Oh, there's a misdirect. Oh,
there's
okay,
a misdirection.
That'll be the. Because now he's going to also get to through the breach in that Emrakul and
yeah,
kill.
but he
Brian.
Yeah. So
he's going to kill him through the breach regardless.
Even if Brian. Okay, so Brian holds back a blocker for the Grizzlebrand, but it doesn't matter because he has a City of Traders.
Yep.
And a show
through the breach
for the Emrakul. Oh, he also has a wipe away too. So with Brian at 3, it looks like Phillip's gonna be able to win this game. Timely misdirection there. And it's funny to say that he really needed to find something in those 7 cards that he just drew.
He had a lot of looks.
Yeah,
but you surely can blank. I mean,
Phillip goes to 3, casts through the breach, and Emrakul will join the party and make short work of Brian Braun the one, dropping him to 8-1 on the weekend. Phillip going up to 9-0 on the weekend. Pretty good start for him. Well on his way to making top 8. There's still a lot of work to do. 7 rounds to go, but a good way to start the day.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting he brought in the through the breaches. We did not expect that for this matchup, but.
I guess he just wanted more, again, just more redundancy on the combo piece side.
But it's strange because we saw Spell Pierce, we saw Misdirection. Maybe he just decided to board out the Intuition.
Which I kind